Purchase your track today. Purchase your track today. Purchase your track today.
Hi. You have so gracefully introduced me. He's so kind. But yes, for me and many people, I believe that it's the people that really make all the difference in your company. I mean, you can have the best ideas, the best products, the best services, but if you don't have the right people at the forefront, it really kills the business. So when I moved from the UK to Ghana, it's one of the things that I was trying to help, change businesses' narrative through human capital. And I call myself a human capital consultant because I feel that, people, you invest in people, and when you invest in people, you look for a good return. So yeah, my name is Shamim. Thank you for having me. I have had the honor and privilege to lead this very, thought-provoking discussion. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce the amazing panelists for this discussion. We have Perry Nelson. I'd love to introduce Alfred Bergeson, who is the founder and CEO at Tribe Network.
Overdose me, love the overdose me. Now you want me, love you, I think of overloading. I'll be overloading.
Then we have Dorothy Gordon, who is a board member and national expert at a National Expert World Summit Awards.
Going get my wallet like this. Wisdom in my knowledge like this. Follow God, I know they follow man. For you, I might have to consider trips to LA taking photographs. She signed by me, then it's an autograph.
Live to die another day for you, baby. Quit my Casanova ways for you, baby. The only time that you say that you hate me is when I take the last slice of pastry.
And then last but not in any way least, we have Estelle Soa.
Still my billboard, baby.
Man, no big get see they be. You dey, I mean like by me. I just wanna be there when you need me. Baby, now your matter, I dey read. Sing all day, yeah. Overdosing, body overdose. I'ma say you carry overload. And you know you bad like commando.
Why doesn't anybody want to sit next to me? Nobody wants to sit next to me. Okay. I love that it's a very balanced panel. It's so good. So what I'll do is, if possible, I would love to allow each of you to introduce yourselves, just a minute about who you are, what you do, and then I will ask each of you an icebreaker question so that we can get to know you a little bit better. So we'll start with you, Perry. No. Is it on?
Hello? Okay. So my name is Perry Nelson, and I'm a research software engineer at Google Ghana. Thank you. Before I moved to Ghana, I was a software engineer at Google for over a decade at the New York office. And I've worked on Google Search, Google Pay, and Google Ads. And I'm excited to be in Ghana.
Hi, I'm Estelle Akufio-Soa. I currently run C-Squared's West Africa operation. C-Squared is a joint venture that was born out of Google, connecting the dots across the continent. Nice to be here.
Hey everyone, my name is Alfred Bergeson, born in Ghana, but I'm residing in Canada right now, and I'm the founder CEO of Tribe Network. So we're a digital innovation hub that connects Black founders in Canada to all the incubators, accelerators, universities digitally, and we also invest grant money to help Black founders start, build, and accelerate their startups. Thank you for having me.
Anytime that you say that you hate me.
Hi everyone, my name's Dorothy Gordon, and I work at the boundaries of tech and society, looking at the impact of technology, the change that it's creating in Africa. And today I'm here representing the World Summit Awards, which rewards startups that work in the area of purpose-driven innovation, fulfilling the SDGs, the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you. And great to be here. You know, you guys are making me feel so young.
Dorothy, you can keep the mic, because what I would have done is, after everybody introducing, I was going to ask an icebreaker, but since you've still got the mic, what I would love to know is, what's one thing on your bucket list that you'd love to try and fulfill in 2023?
Bucket list. I did in 2022 go to Bali, which was very high on my bucket list. Ooh. Haven't thought of 2023 really. I'll be honest, I haven't thought of it. But if I look at the bucket list of things that I worry about, let's say that I really hope that we're going to... Is this too much to hope for? That we can get more women to the point of having 50% of the chief executives in tech companies in Ghana actually being women. So you guys, if you know a woman, encourage her.
Same question?
I love that. No, it's not. It's a different question for you. For you, could you please tell me, what's the best Christmas gift you've received this year? Christmas gift you received this year?
My best Christmas gift was actually coming to Ghana. I'm going to say it, from Canada, having the chance to come here and see no snow is right, but my Christmas gift was the chance to come back home and spend time with family here.
Okay, Estelle, I'd love to know, what's your favorite quote of all time?
Oh, my word. This is when the brain goes completely dead. As I have said to many of you already, if you don't know, today is a public holiday, and I'm confused why we're all here trying to use our brains, and we're not just out getting drunk somewhere. So now you ask me a serious question, a favorite quote. Well, because this was coming to my brain, it's something I still live on, that I learned from Google. So don't know it's so much a quote, but a way of life, which is assuming good intent always.
Okay.
And I love that in life, just to always assume good intent in everyone that I meet, every situation I encounter. It's not easy to remember it always, but I find when I do that it serves me best. So always assuming good intent.
Good, thank you. Perry, if you were not here working, as Estelle said, what would you be doing today if you were not here working?
I've had a long year. I moved to Ghana, I got married, I've done lots of different things, and I'm exhausted. If I
I
wasn't,
might know your wife.
yes, if I wasn't here, I would be sleeping. So,
Okay. So just before, just wanted to kind of like, you know, put all the pressure off and ask some unserious questions. This is a really, really big topic, and I'm so honored to be, you know, on this panel with you all. We're really here to talk about, we want to dive into how tech has really helped build the infrastructure in Africa. And we want to look at how, you know, they've used technology to look at insights and help solve some of Africa's biggest problems. So my first question is to Perry or Estelle, whoever wants to go first. I'd love to know, can tech stand alone in driving economic development?
I feel very underqualified to answer this. But I think that tech has a huge role to play. I like the expression I heard today about leapfrogging. Tech today allows us to kind of make advancements without going through all the steps that everyone else has to. We have an AI lab here where we are innovating on some of the latest models that are being used in text-to-image generation. We can do all of the things that are being done in the US. And I think this is great, but I think there's also good governance, there's policies from the government and how we organize our educational systems, and many other things that also play a role. But as a tech person, I really see a lot of potential for how tech in Africa can move us forward.
Thank you. Estelle, would you like to add to that?
I mean, I think Perry said it, but tech is really an enabler, right? Across whatever sector you're in, whether you're in education, agriculture, healthcare, doesn't matter. To me, technology is the enabler. And so it has a role in it all. But and nothing stands alone in the world, right? So everything, if it comes together in the right way, is what creates success that can be big.
Okay.
Not alone, definitely a critical part of our development.
Sure. Do we have any tech startup founders in the building? Woo! I just want to, let's clap for these guys because they're part of the solution. Thank you. So, I mean, what's missing today that tech can't easily solve, and where does it need support? Would you like to?
Can you ask the question again?
Yes. What's missing in tech today, and you know, where does tech need support?
So as someone who is from here but is getting reintroduced to the ecosystem here, I'm running a company in Canada that is funding startup founders. And what is so important in the infrastructure in any growing tech ecosystem is to actually have incubators and accelerators that can be close to the tech founders and help them, mentor them, you know, introduce them to networks globally. And so I was happy to meet Josiah and our MC tonight, who's doing a great job, by the way. Let's give it up for Josiah.
He is.
And he's running his own incubator and accelerator in Ghana called iSpace, I believe. And I think that is critical. And in order to have founders feel connected, being a founder is not easy. Starting a business is not easy. It's very difficult. And so having a space where you can, you know, connect with other founders and go through tough times and to, you know, have that support is essential. And so I think what I learned from Josiah today was that the incubators that are in Ghana are predominantly led privately. And perhaps there needs to be some more government support, some more collaboration between the public and private sector in order to have these incubators and accelerators scale and also reach rural communities as well.
Sure. So just to put you on the spot, Isaiah, what sort of things is your incubator solving? Do you want to share? Yeah. I didn't want it to be just a conversation with us. I would really love for everybody to share their input.
Okay, so for us, it's just the technical skills and the business development and helping them raise funds. So human capital really is one of the key elements of what is missing in the tech ecosystem. So that's what most of the innovators and incubators do. Really.
Yeah, okay. And you're doing the same thing in Canada?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And have you had any time to look at what the incubators in Ghana and how they compare to the one in Canada? Have you looked at the comparison and how maybe you could add or collaborate to sort of support incubators like
Absolutely.
Esaias?
I mean, I'm learning, and through people like him, I'm definitely going to be doing a lot of that when I'm here over the next month. One of the things that happens in Canada is there are a lot of incubators and accelerators, and a lot of them are funded or led by government. Government funds these not-for-profit entities to lead these hubs, and they trust them to do that. The government doesn't try to do it on their own. They give the incubators hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some instances millions of dollars, to hire a team. 10 people, have startup coaches on your team, and then the incubators that have that expertise in different industries and sectors are able to support the entrepreneurs with a whole lot more capacity. So I think that's one thing that I'm interested in learning about. Is the government doing that? How is the government doing that? And what are some things that we're doing in Canada to connect the ecosystems across the country and the founders together?
That's really good. Thank you. So I would love to hear from you, Dorothy. What infrastructure needs do we need to solve immediately to drive tech growth?
Infrastructure is one of those words that has different definitions depending on who you're talking to. For a long time, when we were talking tech, people were talking about getting the fiber to the home, driving down the bandwidth costs. Internationally now, everybody talks about meaningful connectivity. That means you could have connectivity, but what can you realistically use that connectivity to do? Are you able to run a company on that connectivity? Can you actually study using that connectivity? And what we find generally in Africa is we're not there yet. But I don't like to think of infrastructure in that way. We were just talking about incubators, and you see that if you're growing your startup, there's a whole infrastructure of, you could call it an ecosystem that you need. So if, say, like one of the winners of the World Summit Awards this year from Ghana, Cola Market, they use AI to help SMEs to actually get rid of their inventory, to sell. And in order for them to do that, first of all, they need a level of awareness within the SMEs of what's possible. And we've been failing miserably in that. You see that while in the cities, we have some people who know what tech can do. Generally in Ghana, if you say ICT, oh, it's a video on a social media channel, that's about it. They don't recognize the potential value for their business. So I want you to think of infrastructure broadly, and also this danger. I liked what you said. Our market is Africa. But all too often, startups are actually designing a product for the external or for the very limited urban market. I'm judging competitions all the time internationally. And what I see is there's a lot of retrofitting. I hope you know what I mean by retrofitting. It means you went to Google Play. Let's just use Google Play because we are being very googly today. So you went to Google Play and you saw a great app which is getting a lot of traction, maybe in Pakistan, maybe in London, maybe in New York, and you do the same app for the Ghana market, or for the Nigeria market, or for the Kenya market. a little tweak here, a little tweak there. Okay, but our market, for that kind, that's the problem. And just to touch on what you said, if you noticed, we went for an IMF bailout. Highly unlikely that government is going to put millions of dollars into startups. That's the reality of the situation. Frankly, I feel that our startups have been doing great without government. We do not need government to interfere with business. And we have huge numbers of very rich people in Ghana who could invest in the tech sector, but they haven't because they don't understand it. And that's the same problem every time a startup goes to the bank. They can't even get a loan. So let's work on educating. I'm talking ecosystem infrastructure, mindset infrastructure. Let's work on getting people to understand that tech can drive this economy.
I think you've raised some really, really good points. So I would love for you, Perry, just to add to that because, like Dorothy has said, creating something for the external use is, it's quite sad. But what could you add to what Dorothy has shared?
Around infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a really good answer. Mine is much simpler. I'm really impressed with the work that C-Squared has done in bringing fiber to Ghana. I think that, well done to C-Squared.
To the squatters in the house, are you there? Are you there?
And I think Dorothy also raised a good point. We want internet that can be used for education, that can be used for running businesses. So I would like to see the whole of Ghana online with good enough bandwidth for Netflix, but also for serious things like school and educational videos to self-teach themselves various technologies and things like that. My other point is also very technical. This is something I've seen in the startup world, is just APIs for things like moving money around. We need, as tech innovators, to build these kind of pieces that you find in places like the US that enable people to build complex apps that do interesting things. So payment platforms are one that come to mind. And overall, I just think that we, the technologists, have certain gaps to fill that you see in other places that enable all kinds of different apps to be built.
Great. It's great that you've tapped onto mobile apps because obviously we know Nigeria and Kenya have some of the biggest software developers, and these countries have earned such huge reputation for the tech industries. So what do you think, in your opinion, I'd love to ask Alfred, is the rise in local tech?
I think fintech is obviously a huge player in the rise of tech in Africa. I think from a basic standpoint, there's a lot more money that's being poured into Africa right now over the past couple of years. There's expertise that is coming back and bringing a whole lot of knowledge back to Africa that's also playing a role. But to be honest, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question, so I'm going to pass it off here to Dorothy to chime in a little bit more.
Or Estelle. Let's hear from you.
Sorry, say the question again.
So I wanted to know, we've seen a rise in, the tech industry in Africa, and I wanted to know, what do you think is the cause for that rise?
I think it's a couple things, but definitely, as I said, tech is a solution, and we are living in a continent that has a lot of problems. So I think that's one of the things that forces us to be innovative people, actually, quite naturally, to solve our own problems. And we are a very entrepreneurial people as well, so there aren't as many formal jobs. So I think somewhat a lot of people are also sort of being forced into it by a genuine need to create employment. So I think the two things coming hand in hand. But I also do want to give credit to both the local tech community that's done a lot of work to champion the creation of this ecosystem, but also companies like Google that have been and the Google Ghana team specifically, the human beings, not the Google, but the Googlers, the human beings.
Can I just ask, since you're speaking of Google, previously, a lot of, African tech people would have to leave Africa for jobs. And, and that was so sad. Is that changing now? Is there more opportunities in Africa now?
So I think that there are more opportunities, but when I was listening to the panel earlier, I was reflecting on what I think is a genuine concern that we need to have as well around the massive brain drain that is happening right now. And I understand as a young person an opportunity to work with a large global organization to get global experience on your CV. I totally think it's a great opportunity and I encourage everyone. I feel like I learned a lot. I know it was a topic of discussion. Do you need that formal employment or are you fine just in the startup world? I think for myself, there's a lot that I learned working in a large formal organization like Google, just understanding how such a large company can have so much process and systems in place. My point is, I am concerned as soon as people have got any skill and experience here, they are being encouraged out to leave Ghana. Leave Nigeria. And that's not just in the tech sector, our teachers, our nurses and doctors. And I know that we have a lot of people interested in coming home. We have a lot of people that send money home, but it's still a problem for companies in Ghana, in Nigeria, in Kenya to keep young talent. And I think you should bear that in mind. I do think as well, when you work on the continent, you actually get to experience being more senior, taking on more responsibility than when you go live outside. I mean, who are we? Our name means nothing.
What do we need to do? What do we need to do, Estelle?
Well, it needs to be a balance, and that's why I said I understand, and I encourage anyone that gets that opportunity to take it. But we need more companies setting up here. We need more startups growing. And we need people just to be encouraged to be here. And that also comes to our governments and creating that, sorry, I'll use the word enabling so many times because we just need them to be an enabler. Dorothy said it earlier, not interfere, but create that environment, create the right policies and allow business to grow. Otherwise, it's not attractive. It is tough. Running a business here is not easy, but if you can do it here, I mean, you can do it anywhere, so.
Okay, we could go on and on and on about that, but, I have two more questions before we give it back to the audience, but one of the things I'd love to know is, one, how can the smaller and bigger tech companies work together, and support each other? How can we do better at that?
This is a very tough question. I remember visiting Finland and listening to the Angry Birds story. When Angry Birds took off, they were able to share out bits of their business to other tech companies within their space. And I thought, could this happen in Ghana, that you've got a great product, suddenly it's got market going through the roof? Will you share some of your IP with other companies so that you are able to meet the demands of the market? I'm not seeing that happen. And I think in general, in business in Ghana, and probably most of Africa, there isn't that level of trust. And why isn't there that level of trust? It's because our legal systems are not well developed. Our lawyers are not well grounded in tech issues. One of the things that I do is I periodically check what they are teaching at the Ghana School of Law. And it's depressing. So let's not go there. But we need to get, and the previous panel mentioned it, In tech, there's so many not directly tech jobs. And one of them is being a good tech IP lawyer. We don't have that. So it becomes very difficult for businesses to cooperate. But let me just end by saying that one of the things that government can do, and it has not been doing as well as I would have liked up to now, is we have huge, huge GovTech needs. Who is getting those jobs? Do we have a strategy? They get fed up with me because I say, look, if you're telling me you have to go abroad for national ID today, where is your policy? Where is your strategy? So that 5 years from now, you will be able to give that to local companies. That's what we need to see. And that's what I expect tech companies in Ghana to be lobbying for. That is something very concrete you can lobby for, get changed, so that 5 years from now, you get the business. EdTech, huge amounts of money being spent on software to help kids learn. Health tech, huge amounts. Look at the passport, look at the national ID. We could go on and on. There are so many contracts. And then the other thing, I will be an instigator. Nothing to do with your event today, but one of the things I've been fighting for is transparency. How much money is government spending on tech acquisition? And forget the devices. Let's just focus on the solutions. Let's find out how much they spend, and then we find out how much of that can go to our companies. And when our companies are feeling more secure and they have better lawyers, maybe they will trust each other and share.
Thank you, Dorothy. So it's surprising when you spoke about, wanting more women to go, and have more companies in tech. And I think I read on CNN that it's 30% of women are in the tech space, starting up tech companies globally. And that's above average in Africa, 30% in Africa, and it's above average locally. What I wanted to ask is funding and seed the only way to grow tech companies? Is it only through seed? Would you like to? I think this is yours, but anybody can answer this. Alfred,
okay.
You can answer.
She's asking us if we think seed funding is the only way we can grow tech, and obviously not. I think that financing is just a very small part of it. But I love it that we now have networks of women venture. We have networks of women angel investors. And they are making a big difference in terms of channeling money to women. But it's about the network. It's knowing where to go for the HR advice, where to go for the legal advice. There's so many parts of it depending on the nature of your solution, the logistics advice, the distribution advice. I could go on and on. So why don't you talk?
I'll just add to what you mentioned about the gender part. In Canada, there's a policy called the 50-30 challenge. And incubators, VCs, they can sign up for this 50-30 challenge. And by signing up, they need to have the leadership of their companies be 50% women and at least 30% people of color. And so
good.
When you do that, so I'll give you an example. I'm on the board for the Black Opportunity Fund in Canada. We've raised almost 50 million. The goal is to raise a lot more. The goal is to also do fund-to-fund investment and fund-to-founder investment. If we're ever going to come to Ghana or Ghana someday, that will be a stipulation. If we're funding a venture fund in Ghana, you're going to have 50% of your leadership be women. So that's a policy that I can give you as an example from Canada, and I don't know if that's something similar would work here, but I can tell you for a fact that it is making a change in Canada and North America. And
That's amazing. Did you want to add to that?
No, not really. Just to say, I think for, like in all things, you need to be intentional about it. So having a policy like that, if you set up a company, if you don't have a policy like that, even within your organization, you will find that you will interview for jobs and maybe the receptionist will be female, maybe the office manager will be female, and then the rest are male. So you have to be intentional when you're advertising for jobs, when you're filling positions, etc., when you're setting up a board, otherwise you won't have that gender balance achieved. So it's about being intentional.
Okay, so I'm being, and thank you so much.
For too long.
Just the reason why we're here, okay, I just want to kind of just round up. Whose responsibility is it to build Africa? And I'd love to know, just very briefly from all of you, to just give us your answer on that. Perry, you can go first.
Yeah, so I think I refer to us as technologists, whether you're directly innovating or writing code, or whether you're in one of the other roles. I think that we have somewhat of a responsibility to look ahead to what's possible using technology. So obviously, it's not all on us, but I like to take responsibility for my place in the world. So I'm here with you all in Ghana to see what we can do, and I think we have a role to play, for sure.
Estelle?
Yeah, I think it's 100% our responsibility to build Africa ourselves. And when we see, for example, what we've just gone through in Ghana in the last few months, again, it's just a reminder that if we don't make ourselves robust and self-sustaining, the world is not out to help us. Really and truly, they are out to help themselves. I understand that. So let's get a little selfish and help ourselves as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say Africans' responsibility to build a continent. I do think there's another conversation about accountability and how we're holding each other as Africans accountable, whether you're a diasporian or whether you're born and raised and still live here. And then how are we holding, dare I say it, the white man who has literally, there are countries like Netherlands that have 50% of their economic wealth has been based off of Africa, or France. How are we holding them accountable? Are we?
Wow, this is a tough question. Who's responsible? Obviously, as Africans, primarily it has to be with us. But what I've observed, and actually I'm a development economist by training, and so I've worked all over the world with governments to help supposedly develop. And what I can tell you is very often we don't listen. You have to listen and understand the context in which you are working. To make change happen, you have to have a good grasp of what the baseline is really about. And so, having worked abroad for a lot of my career, I came back to Ghana and I realized that even though I went to secondary school here, I went to university, first degree here, I didn't understand the country well enough. I thought that being a development economist, always working with developing countries, I would have the insight I needed. And then I realized I didn't. So you have to learn. And Lee Kuan Yew, I remember reading that Lee Kuan Yew spent about 4 years relearning Singapore when he went back. It can even take more than the 4 years. You've got to listen, you've got to understand, and it becomes more complex today because we are not just looking at Ghana, we are looking at our continent. And our continent is so diverse, you know. And let me just throw this in. We are developing all these solutions. All of them tend to be in English. There are very few solutions which pay attention to local language. And I found out that 70% of Ghanaians do not have a good grasp of English beyond the day-to-day. So if you're talking to them and you're selling them a solution, you need to speak their language, whichever language it is, whether it is Akan, Ewe, Gan, whatever. And we now have the AI that can help us to do that, the artificial intelligence solutions that could help us to do that. But we don't see our developers going there. So yes, we have to develop Africa, but we have to pay far more attention to actually understanding the lives of the normal, everyday people in Africa, how they survive, what are their problems, what are their issues, and then we solve them. We cannot solve problems just for the Afropolitans, like we are all Afropolitans, but we can go beyond that. Thanks.
Thank you. We are just about out of time now, and we will not be taking any questions, no? But what I would like to do is really just take a moment to thank my panelists today. Thank you so much, Perry, Estelle, Alfred, and Dorothy. And just thank you to the team that have asked me to do this, and to the audience for tuning in. Thank you so much.